The plastic passions are endless in the sense that they cause those whom they infect and infest to feel deprived of purpose and final causality. Whereas genuine passions or emotions move the woman experiencing them out of the fixed frame state, plastic passions stop her dead. They function to hide the passions which have been converted from verbs into things. They are thingified, reified passions. Since they have no perceivable causes, they function to serve the mechanisms of blaming the victim. The following list names some of these unmoving, paralyzing feelings: guilt, anxiety, depression, hostility, bitterness, resentment, frustration, boredom, resignation, fulfillment. These feelings exist, of course. Women do feel them, in the sense they can be called real. Indeed, plastics exist and we can feel them. However, like plastics, these feelings lack natural wildness. It is my contention that they are man-made, that they are products of fixocracy. I would sustain the thesis that they are sickening substitutes that poison our powers, preventing emotion. They fail to connect our process with the context of elemental reality. Those whom they infest can be nervously neurotic, but are hampered from being potently pyrotic, from burning down the bastions of bureaucracy, flying free. Plastic passions, then, have many names. Often, however, they have no name. They are then nameless to the woman who is experiencing them. This namelessness and apparent unnamableness function to prevent women from potently naming and therefore changing their situation. This situation was acknowledged to some extent in the 60s by Betty Friedan, when in The Feminine Mystique she discussed the problem that has no name. The housewives she interviewed, and the millions more whom they represented, believed that there must be something more to life than the supposedly fulfilled lives they were enduring in quiet desperation, but they had no idea what that might be. Instead of being able to move, act purposefully, they could only confusedly feel and deny their nameless problem floating within. In the 80s, millions of women are in a similar situation, for the 80s are at least as repressive as the 50s and early 60s. However, there are differences. For now there is a recent tradition of feminist writing and activities, a feminist culture, that is largely, although not entirely, inaccessible to the majority of women in the United States and in other parts of the world. Even the advantage of partial accessibility of this tradition is blunted by the plasticization of the feminist movement, its reification into a thing controlled by the media men and their professionals. The situation might be compared to the propagation of information concerning the need for natural foods, combined with the selling of unnatural foods labeled natural. Just want to interject my own thing into this. I just found out today that they're relabeling aspartame as a natural food. Can you believe that? Causes cancer. Totes natural. Well, God, I can just imagine the stupid comments I would get on that. That's a carcinogenic things are natural. Yeah, whatever, bro. One consequence of this situation is that many women believe that they have had the option of feminism and that they have rejected it with full knowledge and consent. Another consequence is that some have bought the plasticized product while believing that they have become feminists. In both instances, plastic passions are reinforced within the deceived women's psyches. The possibility of moving is blocked. Yet there are many other women for whom the memory, the hope, and the fact of real movement have not been destroyed. And in subterranean ways, this movement has expanded and intensified. The way out of plasticization of feminism is identical with escape from possession by plastic passions. For true feminism is movement, just as true passions are movements. The process of naming is essential to this breakthrough beyond problems that seemingly have no name. Such naming is basic, and at the same time it requires the most subtle and clear-headed analysis of which we are capable. For even women who, having seen through much of the masterminded mediation, continue courageously on the journey of feminism, often become enmeshed in seemingly unnameable feelings. When one has avoided or managed to get beyond traditional roles and other pitfalls, it can be puzzling to encounter again, though in less familiar forms, the all too familiar internalized demons. Plastic pseudo-passions are the products of patriarchal processing. In the 19th century, Matilda Jocelyn Gage wrote of the materialization of spiritual truth by the Christian Church. Analogous to this is the plasticization, a natural materialization, of inspiriting passion by patriarchy through all of its institutions. The plastic passions are unnatural knots, snarls of the spirit, just as the father's lies are mind bindings. These feelings are will bindings that twist the movement of women's appetites in upon themselves. Instead of spiraling outward, they snap backward, strangling the victim. Instead of experiencing emotions that are her living threads of connectedness with external and internal reality, the paralyzed prey is fixed in the foreground, disconnected from elemental movement. She experiences only elementary emotions, those foreground feelings that she cannot really name. It might be objected that I do claim to name some of the plastic passions in the listing printed above. My point is not that these are, by their nature, or rather by their pseudo-nature, not adequately nameable by their victim, for the woman possessed by a plastic passion cannot name its agent or its object. Indeed, it does have an easily identifiable agents or objects, for it is the snarl of petrified passions. It stops the woman from emotional breathing and ultimately can cause her spiritual and physical death. I'm not saying that she cannot use the right labels as labels go. She may say, I feel depressed, anxious, frustrated, bored, etc. But this is not naming. For naming is a verb that evokes, and that is a process of active realizing. Since plastic passions are not ontologically or elementally real, that is, since they are not movements of being, they are not realizable. Rather, a woman realizes her true passions that are being choked by these synthetic substitutes, and this process frees her from the lethal fix that is freezing her. The vast difference between emotion and pseudo-passion then becomes tangibly understood. A woman then recognizes that when she experiences real anger, that is, rage, at her oppressor and suppressor, she is moved to action by her rage. She sees that in contrast to this, if she is merely frozen in states that can accurately be labeled hostile or bitter or resentful, she is not moved to act. She also sees that the agents of snooldom are constantly trying to convert her rage into plastic by labeling it as hostility, bitterness, etc. They work to label it out of existence, converting into these plastic passions by the bad magic of verbic duration. She sees also that these sickening substitutes are blooded with anxiety, depression, guilt, frustration. The furthest that she can move with this package deal is to resignation. And as Simone de Beauvoir has written, there is hardly a sadder virtue than resignation. I was thinking about this passage in Mary Daly's Pure Lust because I had a few interactions with some other women this week that were kind of, I guess they kind of evoke this kind of thinking in me. It's pretty sad how many women, after being able to come to a point where they can name men, namely, let's just go say there for once, as a problem, retreat in fear of what that means, and then also take on the labels that are thrown at her, like bitter and hostile and frustrated, those kind of things that aren't real. And when someone like me, for example, doesn't buy into the idea that I'm filled with hate or bitter or just terribly sad, and actually my thoughts are valid and true, people don't know where to put that, and they want to, make it into something that it's not. Anyway, I thought this might be helpful reading for some people out there. Who knows, right? Later.